The night was cold and the ground was wet after the storm. The city on the alien frontier had no lights in the outskirts. Only silence and the sound of dripping water filled the air. In the middle of this dark street, a torn sack was lying close to a broken wall. At first it looked like trash. Nobody cared to look at it. People walked past it. No one stopped. But inside the sack something was moving very slowly. The sound was so weak that even the wind almost covered it. The sack shifted. A tiny hand pushed from the inside but fell back. The girl inside was small, fragile, and weak. She had pale glowing skin, faint marks like stars across her arms, and eyes that shimmered even when closed. She was not human. She was an alien child, maybe no older than 6. Whoever had put her there wanted her to disappear. They tied the sack with rough rope so she could not escape. They left her to die quietly where no one would see. But fate was not silent that night. A man was walking back from his long shift at the factory. His name was Daniel. He was human, middle-aged, tired, and his hands were covered in oil stains from machines. Every day was the same for him: work, walk, eat, sleep. He did not expect anything unusual. He just wanted to reach his small apartment before the rain started again. As Daniel passed the broken wall, he slowed down. Something felt strange. It was not the sight of the sack because he thought it was trash. It was the sound. A faint whisper brushed against his ear. It was not wind, not rain, not the rustle of animals. It was a voice, fragile and trembling. "Mom." Daniel froze. His heart raced. He looked around. The street was empty. Nobody was there. Then he heard it again, soft but clear. "Mom, please." He looked at the sack. His mind refused to believe it. Who would put a child in a sack? Maybe it was his imagination. But the sack moved again. His body reacted before his mind could think. He stepped closer. "Hello?" he whispered, kneeling near the sack. For a moment, silence answered him. Then a weak, broken sound came from inside. "Mom?" Daniel's chest tightened. It was not his imagination. There was someone inside. He touched the sack and felt the warmth of a body. His hands shook. He quickly untied the rough rope. The knot was hard, soaked with mud, but he forced it open with his dirty fingers. When the sack opened, he saw her face. Large silver eyes blinked weakly at him. Her lips trembled. She was not human, but she looked terrified and lost. She tried to speak, but only a small whisper came out. "Don't leave me." Daniel's breath caught in his throat. In that moment, he did not care if she was alien or human. She was just a child, abandoned and helpless. Anger burned in him against whoever had done this. He carefully lifted her out. She was light, almost weightless, her skin cold from the night air. The girl clung to his shirt weakly. She whispered again, not opening her eyes fully. "Mom, where are you?" Daniel felt his heart twist. He held her close, shielding her from the rain that started to fall again. He looked down the empty street. Whoever left her here was long gone. But he knew one thing. If he left her behind, she would not survive the night. The decision was clear. He could not walk away. He adjusted her in his arms and started moving quickly. His mind raced with questions. Who was she? Why was she left here? What danger would come if people knew he took her in? But none of those mattered right now. The only thing that mattered was that she was alive, and she had called out for her mother, and he had answered. Daniel hurried through the rain with the girl in his arms. The storm was growing worse, and the streets of the frontier city were almost empty. Every step he took splashed in puddles, but he did not stop. The girl's body was so light that it scared him. She was breathing, but her breaths were shallow, fragile, as if she might stop at any moment. When he reached his small apartment at the edge of the district, he unlocked the old metal door and stepped inside. The place was not much, just one dim lamp, a table, a narrow bed, and shelves with tools from his work. He kicked the door shut behind him and laid the sack on the floor. Then carefully he set the girl down on his bed. For a moment, Daniel just stared. Her silver eyes half opened, watching him weakly. Her glowing skin seemed to shimmer under the light, showing faint lines like stars running along her arms. He had seen aliens before, traders, soldiers, and even refugees, but never a child like this. She looked special. He pulled off his jacket and covered her small frame. She shivered, clutching the cloth like it was the only warmth left in the universe. Daniel crouched beside her. "Can you hear me?" he asked softly. The girl's lips moved, but no sound came out. He leaned closer and finally a whisper reached him. Water. Daniel quickly filled a glass from the tap and held it to her lips. She sipped weakly, some drops spilling down her chin. After a moment, she breathed a little easier. Better? He asked. She nodded faintly. But her eyes still searched the room as if looking for someone else. Then, almost too softly to hear, she whispered one word again. Mom. The sound cut through him like a blade. He had no answers for her. He wanted to tell her she was safe now, but the truth was he did not even know what trouble he had just walked into. As she drifted into sleep, Daniel sat back in the chair near his table. His mind spun. Who had put her in that sack? Why? She was not just any alien child. Her glowing skin and star-marked arms looked like something from legends he had heard whispered at the factory. Rumors of rare alien bloodlines. The kind, powerful people wanted either destroyed or controlled. He rubbed his face with both hands. He should have called the patrol. That was the safe thing to do. But he knew what the patrol would do if they found her. They would take her, lock her away, or worse. He could not let that happen. The storm outside pounded harder. He tried to rest his eyes, but in the middle of the night he heard her voice again. Don't leave me, she mumbled in her sleep, her small fingers clutching the edge of his jacket like it was life itself. Daniel felt his chest tighten. He moved closer, sitting on the floor near the bed. I'm here, he whispered, though she could not hear him. I won't leave you. But his promise brought him no comfort, because in the silence of the night he realized something dangerous. If someone had left her to die, it meant they wanted her gone. And if they discovered she was still alive, they would come looking, and they would come soon. Daniel looked at the window, the rain dripping down the glass. He had brought her into his life without thinking. Now there was no going back. The question was not if danger would come. It was when. And when it did, he knew he would have to stand between her and the people who wanted her gone. For the first time in years, Daniel felt a fire inside him. He had nothing worth fighting for before tonight. But now he did. The tiny girl who had whispered, Mom. The morning came heavy with fog. Daniel had barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard the girl's voice calling for her mother. When he finally looked at her, curled on his bed under his jacket, he felt both fear and a strange sense of duty. She was still breathing, still alive, though her skin glowed faintly, brighter than last night, as if her strength was slowly returning. Daniel stood at the window, staring out into the narrow street below. The storm had washed the ground clean, but the air felt tense. Something in his gut told him this day would not be like the others. A knock broke the silence. It was soft at first, then harder. 3 sharp raps on the metal door. Daniel froze. Hardly anyone visited him. He lived quietly, kept to himself. He turned to the girl. She stirred, half awake, but did not open her eyes fully. He whispered to her, "Stay quiet." Then he pulled the blanket higher over her small frame. The knock came again, louder. Daniel wiped his hands on his shirt and forced himself to open the door. 2 men stood outside. Their clothes were neat, far neater than anyone in this poor district. One wore a long coat, the other a dark uniform with a badge Daniel did not recognize. Their eyes were sharp, scanning him and the room behind him without asking. "Morning," the man in the coat said smoothly. "We're making inquiries. Last night something was misplaced. Perhaps you saw something unusual?" Daniel shook his head. "I just came home from the factory, slept, nothing unusual." The man smiled thinly. "Really? Because people heard things. They said someone was wandering these streets during the storm, someone carrying a bundle." Daniel's heart pounded, but he kept his face calm. "Only bundle I carried was my tools. Long night at work." The man's smile never reached his eyes. He leaned a little closer. "If you do happen to see something, a stray animal maybe, or a strange child, you would be wise to report it. Some things are dangerous to keep. For everyone." The other man in uniform glanced past Daniel's shoulder, eyes landing for a second on the bed inside. Daniel stepped forward, blocking the view. "Like I said, I saw nothing." The silence stretched. Then the man in the coat tapped the doorframe lightly with his finger. "Very well. We'll check again later. People always remember more the second time." Daniel closed the door slowly. His hands shook as he locked it. He turned to the girl. Her silver eyes were open now, wide with fear. "She had heard everything. Who are they?" Daniel asked softly, crouching beside her. The girl's lips trembled. She spoke for the first time in a clear whisper, though weak. "Hunters." The word sent chills down Daniel's spine. He poured her more water and tried to keep his voice steady. "They want you." She nodded, tears sliding down her glowing cheeks. "They killed my mother. They wanted me too. But she hid me. They found me. Put me in the sack." Her voice broke. Daniel clenched his fists. Rage boiled inside him. Whoever these hunters were, they had murdered her mother and tried to silence her forever. And now they were searching. He sat back, rubbing his temples. He had no plan. If the hunters returned, they would search his home and the girl would be gone. If he ran, he had no place to hide her. But he could not abandon her. The girl reached out with a trembling hand, touching his sleeve. Her eyes begged him silently. "Please, don't leave me." Daniel met her gaze. Something inside him hardened. He had lived too long as just a tired worker with nothing to lose. Now he had something to protect. "No one's taking you," he said firmly. Outside, boots echoed faintly on the street. The hunters had not gone far. They were watching, waiting. Daniel knew he had only hours, maybe less, before they returned. And when they did, he would have to choose: hide, fight, or run. Whatever happened, his life would never be the same again. Daniel could not sit still after the hunters left. He paced the small room, every creak of the floorboards sounding louder than thunder. The girl watched him silently from the bed, her silver eyes wide with fear. The air inside the apartment felt heavy, as if the walls themselves were listening. He stopped at the window and pulled the curtain aside just enough to see the street. The two hunters were still nearby, pretending to question strangers. But Daniel knew better. They were waiting for him to slip. Waiting for him to reveal what he was hiding. He clenched his fists. He had one choice: to move before they came back. Daniel turned to the girl. "We can't stay here," he said firmly. "They'll return. And next time they won't ask questions. They'll take you." The girl pulled the jacket tighter around herself. Her voice was a whisper. "Where will we go?" Daniel hesitated. He had never left this district, never needed to. His life had been simple, dull, without purpose. But now everything had changed. "Somewhere they won't find you," he said at last. "There are places, old tunnels, abandoned factories. I know the routes. I've worked here long enough." He gathered a small bag, stuffing it with water, bread, and a tool he often carried. A heavy wrench. It was not much, but it was something he could swing if the hunters cornered him. As he packed, the girl asked softly, "Why are you helping me?" The question made him pause. Why was he? Logic told him to leave her. She was not his problem. But when he looked at her, small, fragile, yet glowing faintly with something rare, he knew. "Because you called out," he said quietly, "and no one answered. No one but me." The girl blinked, tears shining in her eyes. She nodded, as if those words meant more to her than he could ever understand. Night fell faster than Daniel wanted. He wrapped her in a long cloak to hide her glowing skin. Then he opened the back window that led into a narrow alley. The city's heart beat differently at night. Shadows moved faster, whispers carried longer. He helped her climb out first, then followed. The streets were nearly empty, but Daniel's eyes caught glimpses of danger. A shadow that lingered too long, a lantern that turned toward them before fading away. The hunters had spread their net wider. They kept to the alleys, slipping past the crumbling walls of abandoned shops. The girl clutched his hand tightly, her small fingers trembling. Each time she stumbled, Daniel lifted her without slowing. He moved with urgency, guided by instinct. At last they reached the entrance of an old factory, its gates rusted and bent. Daniel pushed through the gap and led her inside. The vast space smelled of dust and metal. Broken machines stood like skeletons in the dark. "We'll rest here for tonight," he whispered, setting her down near a pile of old cloth. He gave her water and she sipped slowly. But before he could relax, the girl spoke again, her voice trembling. "They can find me anywhere. They follow the light, the glow." She lifted her small hands, showing the faint shimmer on her skin. Daniel's stomach dropped. If the hunters tracked her by the glow, then no hiding place would last. He knelt in front of her. "Can you stop it?" She shook her head. "Only if I'm very weak. But then I will die." Silence filled the factory. Daniel looked at her glowing skin, then at the dark city outside the broken windows. The hunters were not just chasing her. They had a way to find her no matter where he went. His grip tightened on the wrench. If hiding was useless, then running was useless too. The only path left was to fight. He turned back to the girl, determination hardening his eyes. "Then let them come," he said. "If they want you, they'll have to go through me first." The girl stared at him, surprised. For the first time, her lips curved into the faintest smile. Outside, faint footsteps echoed in the distance. The hunters were closing in. Daniel stood tall, ready. Tonight would decide everything. The silence in the abandoned factory was sharp, almost alive. Every drip of water from the cracked ceiling echoed like a drum. Daniel stood near the girl, wrench in his hand, eyes fixed on the shadows. He could hear them now, footsteps, steady and deliberate, moving closer with every second. The girl clutched his sleeve, her glowing skin faint under the cloak. She whispered, "They're here." Daniel squeezed her hand once, a silent promise. Then he motioned for her to stay low behind the pile of old cloth. He stepped forward into the open space between rusted machines, his heart hammering. The first hunter appeared through the broken doorway, his long coat brushing against the floor. His smile was cold, his eyes sharper than steel. The second hunter entered from the other side, blocking the escape. Their boots echoed as they stepped inside, spreading apart like wolves circling prey. "Well," the man in the coat said, voice calm and cruel, "I thought you were lying last time, but I should have trusted my instincts. You did find something." Daniel tightened his grip on the wrench. "She's just a child." The hunter's smile widened. "She's not a child. She's property. Dangerous property. You don't even know what you're holding, do you?" Daniel stood his ground. "All I know is she's alive, and you wanted her dead." The second hunter pulled something from his belt, a long rod that hummed with faint energy. "Step aside, human. We'll make this easy. You don't want to be part of this." Daniel's pulse raced. Fear clawed at him, but something stronger burned inside, anger and a stubborn refusal to give in. He lifted the wrench, his voice steady. "You'll have to take her over my dead body." The hunters exchanged a glance. Then, without another word, the one with the rod lunged forward. Daniel swung the wrench with every ounce of strength he had. Metal slammed against metal, sparks flying as the rod met the wrench. The force shook his arms, but he held firm. The hunter shoved, but Daniel pushed back, teeth clenched. Behind him, the girl cried out, her skin glowing brighter in fear. The second hunter's eyes locked on the light, and he stepped toward her. "No," Daniel roared. He twisted the wrench, slamming it into the first hunter's shoulder. The man stumbled, growling in pain. Daniel turned just in time to see the second one reaching for the girl. He grabbed a broken pipe from the ground and hurled it across the room. It clattered against the wall, drawing the hunter's attention for a brief second. Enough time for Daniel to rush in and block his path. The girl crawled deeper behind the cloth, tears streaking down her cheeks. She wanted to hide, but her glow betrayed her. The hunters could see the faint shimmer even in the shadows. "Daniel," she cried weakly. Her voice gave him strength. He swung again, striking the second hunter's leg. The man grunted, stumbling. But before Daniel could follow up, the first hunter was on him again, slamming the rod against his side. Pain exploded through him and he dropped to one knee. The girl screamed, her glow suddenly blazing brighter than ever before. The entire factory lit up with silver light, shadows fleeing into the corners. The hunters shielded their eyes, cursing. Daniel forced himself to his feet, ignoring the pain. He used the moment of distraction, raising the wrench high and smashing it into the nearest machine. Sparks erupted, wires snapping, flames spitting into the air. The sudden chaos filled the room with smoke and noise. "Run," he shouted to the girl, but she didn't run. Instead, she crawled out from hiding, her glow blazing like a star. She held her tiny hands up, and for a moment Daniel thought he saw energy swirling around her. The hunters froze, eyes wide. "Impossible," one whispered. Daniel stared too, breathless. The girl's glow was no longer just light, it was power. Something ancient, something alive, and it was growing stronger. The factory glowed like a lantern in the dark city. The little girl stood trembling, her silver skin blazing brighter with every heartbeat. Daniel shielded his eyes, squinting through the light, unable to believe what he was seeing. She was no longer just a weak child hidden in a sack. She looked like a living star wrapped in fragile skin. The hunters staggered back, their cruel smiles replaced by shock. One hissed through his teeth, "She's not supposed to have awakened yet." The other raised his rod, but his hand shook. Even they feared what stood before them. Daniel forced himself upright, clutching his side where the weapon had struck him. Pain throbbed, but he ignored it. His eyes never left the girl. "It's okay," he said hoarsely. "Don't be afraid." Her silver eyes locked onto his, wide with fear. "I can't stop it," she whispered, her voice breaking. The glow pulsed like a heartbeat, shaking the walls. Dust rained from the ceiling, machines rattled, and the hunters cursed as the air thickened with energy. One of them shouted, "Contain her before it's too late." He lunged forward, rod raised. Daniel reacted without thinking. He grabbed a rusted chain hanging from the ceiling and swung it with all his strength. The chain wrapped around the hunter's arm, yanking him sideways into a pile of broken crates. The man hit the ground hard, the rod clattering away. But the other hunter charged straight for the girl. His coat whipped behind him as he pulled a blade from his belt, its edge gleaming. "She dies now. No!" Daniel roared, sprinting forward. But before he could reach them, the girl lifted her tiny hands. Light burst out like a wave, blasting across the factory. The hunter was thrown back, smashing into a machine with a scream. Sparks showered down, metal twisting under the force. Daniel skidded to a stop, stunned. The girl's glow surrounded her like armor, her hair floating as if carried by invisible wind. Her small frame shook, not from weakness this time, but from the sheer power pouring out of her. She turned slowly, looking at Daniel with glowing eyes that held something far older than a child. "They killed my mother," she whispered. "They wanted me gone. But she told me, never let them take me." Daniel swallowed hard. "Then we won't let them." The hunters struggled to rise, their faces pale. The one with the coat spat blood onto the floor. "Do you even know what she is, human? She's not salvation. She's a weapon. And when she loses control, you'll die first." Daniel stepped between them and the girl, wrench in hand, shoulders squared. "She's a child. She's not your weapon. She's not your victim. And she's not alone anymore." The man's eyes narrowed. "Fool, you've already doomed yourself." He pulled a small device from his coat and pressed a button. A shrill sound filled the air, making the girl flinch. The glow flickered, her power straining as if something tried to choke it. She screamed, falling to her knees. The light dimmed, though faint sparks still danced across her skin. Daniel's heart pounded. He dashed forward and slammed the wrench against the hunter's hand. The device shattered, sparks flying. The man howled, clutching his wrist. The shrill sound died instantly. The glow around the girl surged back, brighter than ever. The floor cracked beneath her as the energy poured out, unstoppable. The hunters scrambled, fear plain in their eyes now. "This isn't over," the one in uniform shouted. He grabbed his injured partner and dragged him toward the broken doorway. Smoke and dust swirled around them as they fled into the night. Silence fell heavy again, broken only by the hum of lingering energy. Daniel turned slowly. The girl knelt on the floor, trembling, the glow fading until only faint silver lines remained on her skin. She looked so small again, so fragile. Daniel rushed to her side, kneeling. "You okay?" he asked softly, her lips quivered. "I hurt them." He put a hand on her shoulder, steady and warm. "You protected yourself. You protected us. Don't ever think you're wrong for surviving." Tears spilled from her eyes, glowing faint in the dark. She leaned against him, exhausted. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her tight, but his mind raced. The hunters had escaped. They would return, and next time they wouldn't come alone. Daniel looked out into the night through the cracked windows. He knew one truth now. This girl carried something greater than either of them understood. And if the hunters wanted her so badly, then she was more important than he had ever guessed, and he would fight the entire world if he had to, because he had made his choice. The night after the battle was uneasy. Daniel sat awake in the ruined factory, his back against a broken machine, wrench still in his hand. The little girl slept curled beside him, her faint glow flickering like dying embers. For the first time since he found her, she looked at peace. But Daniel's mind was not calm. The hunters would return. He knew it. Men like that did not give up. They had seen her power, and now they would bring more. Soldiers, weapons, chains strong enough to break any resistance. And when they came, they would not just want her. They would want to erase anyone who had touched her. That meant him. Dawn broke gray and cold. Daniel stirred the girl awake gently. Her silver eyes opened, heavy with exhaustion. She whispered, "They'll come again." Daniel nodded. "Yes, but this time we'll be ready. Before she could ask what he meant, a sound cut through the silence, marching boots. Many boots. The echo of metal and voices drifted through the streets outside. Daniel's heart clenched. They hadn't even waited. The hunters had returned with reinforcements. The girl's glow brightened nervously, her small hands trembling. "I can't fight them all." Daniel knelt in front of her, steady and calm. "Listen to me. You don't have to fight them alone. You're not alone anymore." The factory doors shuddered as soldiers forced them open. Dozens poured inside, rifles gleaming, armor clinking. The two hunters entered behind them, their faces bruised but smiling with cruel triumph. "There she is," the man in the coat sneered. "And the fool who thinks he can keep her." Daniel stood tall, placing himself between them and the girl. "She's not yours. She'll never be yours." The hunters gestured and the soldiers raised their weapons. The girl clutched Daniel's sleeve, terrified. "They'll kill you," she whispered. Daniel looked down at her with a faint smile. "Not before I make them regret coming." The first volley of fire erupted, bullets screaming through the air. Daniel grabbed the girl and dove behind a machine. Sparks and dust exploded around them. He coughed, pulling her close. "Stay down!" But the girl's glow was already building. She could not hold it back. Tears rolled down her cheeks as the light burst from her skin. The soldiers staggered, shielding their eyes. Daniel saw his chance. He leapt from cover, swinging his wrench with fury. It smashed into the nearest soldier's helmet, dropping him instantly. Daniel kicked another away, grabbing his rifle and hurling it across the floor. The girl's power pulsed, throwing men off their feet like rag dolls. The hunters shouted commands, but the soldiers faltered, fear growing in their eyes. "Contain her," one hunter roared. "She must not ascend." Daniel didn't understand the word, but the girl did. Her eyes widened, glowing brighter. She gasped. "That's what my mother told me. Ascend." Energy swirled around her like a storm, lifting debris into the air. Machines rattled. Glass shattered, and the very ground trembled. Daniel shielded her with his body as the light intensified. "You can do this," he whispered. "I'm with you, always." The hunters, desperate now, lunged forward. One swung his rod at Daniel, but Daniel blocked it with his wrench. Pain seared his arms, but he held firm. The other raised a blade toward the girl, but before it could touch her, her power erupted in a final surge. A wave of pure silver light blasted across the factory. Soldiers screamed as they were hurled out through the doors. The hunters themselves were thrown into the street, their weapons shattered. The light rose higher, breaking through the roof, shooting into the sky like a beacon. When it faded, silence fell. Smoke curled from the broken walls, the factory in ruins. Daniel looked around, breathing hard. The soldiers were gone. The hunters lay unconscious outside, broken but alive. He turned to the girl. She was on her knees, trembling but smiling faintly. Her glow was soft now, gentle. She looked at him with shining eyes. "You didn't leave me." Daniel knelt, pulling her into his arms. "I told you I never would." For the first time since that night he found her in the sack, she believed it. The city outside would not stay quiet forever. More hunters might come. More danger would follow. But Daniel no longer cared. He had found something worth fighting for. Something greater than himself. A tiny voice that once called out for Mom had given him a reason to live again, and he would protect her, no matter what.